You know what? Nobody tells you that one day you're going to sit down in a quiet room and the silence is going to ask you a question you're not ready to answer. It's going to say, did you love them while you had them? Not. Did you provide for them? Not. Did you show up? Not. Did you say the right things at the right times? Did you love them while you had them? And most of you watching this right now are going to answer that question the same way I did, with a long silence. And then a slow, quiet no. Not completely. Not the way they deserved. I know that's hard to hear. Believe me, it was harder to live. My name is Harold Eugene Carpenter. I am 92 years old. I was born in a farmhouse outside of Macon, Georgia in 1933. I've outlived a wife, a son, 2 brothers, and more friends than I have fingers to count them on. I've also outlived most of my regrets. And today I want to tell you the one secret, the one thing that changed what was left of my life. Not a lesson I read in a book, not something a preacher told me. Something I learned the hard, ugly, expensive way. The way most of us learn the things that actually matter. There is a disease. It doesn't show up in any hospital. No doctor's going to diagnose it. No medicine touches it. I call it later disease. I'll hug her later. I'll call him back later. I'll slow down later. I'll say, I love you later. I'll be present later. Later, later, later. It sounds harmless, doesn't it? Later sounds reasonable. Later sounds responsible, like you're just being practical. But here's what later actually is. Later is a thief. It doesn't take things from you violently. It doesn't break down your door in the middle of the night. It was to wait patiently, right outside the window of every single ordinary moment you let pass by. And then one Tuesday, and it's always a Tuesday it seems, never something dramatic. You reach for the thing you said you'd get to later, and it's gone? That was the secret. I didn't know I needed to learn not how to be successful, not how to be strong, not how to weather hard times, how to be right here, right now, while it's still here. My wife's name was Elaine Ruth Carpenter. Born Elaine Ruth Dawson, out of Savannah. She had this laugh. I don't know how else to describe it. It sounded like it surprised her every time it came out. Like joy just ambushed her from the inside. We were married 51 years. And I will tell you something that I am not proud of. For about 35 of those years, I was next to her. I was not with her. I came home. I sat at the dinner table. I watched television in the same room. I slept in the same bed. But I was somewhere else. I was at the job I'd already left. I was in the argument we'd had last Thursday. I was worrying about the mortgage, about my father getting old, about whether my son Tommy was falling in with the wrong crowd. I was everywhere but in the room I was actually standing in. Elaine used to say to me, and she said it gently because that was her way. She'd say, Harold, where'd you go? And I'd look up from the newspaper or the television set and I'd say, I'm right here, Elaine. I was not right there. I was a ghost in my own house, walking through rooms, going through motions, present in body but absent in spirit. And the saddest part, she loved me anyway. She set that table for me every single morning. She left the porch light on. She reached for my hand during commercials without even thinking about it. She was there, fully, completely, stubbornly there. And I kept saying ... later. When work settles down, when the kids are grown, when we retire, when we get to that trip, we always talked about the one to the Oregon coast. Then I'll really be here, Elaine. Then I'll show you what you mean to me. We never made it to the Oregon coast. Elaine passed on a Wednesday morning in February of 2009. Stroke, fast, merciful in the way it didn't drag on, but cruel in the way it didn't give me a chance to say anything I should have said 1,000 Tuesdays before. There is nothing in this world that prepares you for the moment you realize that later has closed its window, that the person you are going to love better tomorrow is not going to be there tomorrow. My son, Tommy was Lord. He was a firecracker, stubborn as George Euclid, smart in a way that made teacher nervous. He had this habit of drumming his fingers on every surface near him, constantly, like there was music inside him that couldn't stop coming out. Tommy and we butted heads, the way fathers and sons do when they are more alike than either one wants to admit. I was hard on him. I grew up with a father who believed that difficulty made men, that softness was a weakness, that you didn't tell your son he was doing a good job because that would make him stop trying. So I carried that forward. The way we carry things forward without even realizing we've picked them up, I pushed Tommy. I criticized more than I praised. When he did something right, I moved on to the next thing he needed to fix. When he did something wrong, I made sure he knew it. And Tommy, God loved him. Tommy spent his whole adolescence reaching for something from me that I kept just barely out of reach. Not out of cruelty. I want to be clear about that. I thought I was toughening him. I thought that's what love looked like between fathers and sons. I didn't know any other language. He moved to Portland in 1987. We talked on the phone on Sundays. Polite conversations to people being careful around each other. He died in 1999. Heart attack. He was 41 years old. 41 years old. And at his funeral, one of his friends, a young woman named Dara, who'd known him for years, she came up to me and she said, "Mr. Carpenter, Tommy talked about you all the time. He was so proud of you." And I nearly fell apart right there in that church because I never told him I was proud of him. Not once. Not in a way that he could hold on to. He spent 41 years looking for something from me that I kept meaning to give him later. Here is what I want you to understand. Regret is not dramatic. The movies show it wrong. In the movies, regret looks like screaming at the sky, breaking things, falling to your knees. Real regret is much quieter than that. Real regret is setting the table for 2 people and remembering you only need 1 plate now. It's reaching for the phone to call someone and getting halfway through dialing before you remember. It's hearing a song, just some ordinary song on the radio, and having to pull the car over because you can't see through what's happening to your eyes. Real regret is the empty chair at Thanksgiving that everybody pretends not to look at. Real regret is ordinary. It lives in the most ordinary moments of the most ordinary days. I have sat in this chair, this exact chair, on hundreds of mornings, and I have replayed so many moments. The morning Elaine asked me if I wanted to take a walk after breakfast, and I said I had things to get done. There was nothing that urgent. There never was. I just didn't feel like it. The afternoon, Tommy called on a Sunday and said he had something he wanted to talk to me about, and I told him I was watching the game and I'd call him back. I called him back 3 days later. We talked about nothing. I would never know what he wanted to talk about that Sunday. You hear me? I would go to my grave never knowing what my son wanted to say to me on that Sunday afternoon, because I was watching a football game. Because I said later. Now, I don't tell you all of this to send you away sad. I tell you this because of what happened after. After Elaine passed, after Tommy was gone, I spent about 2 years that I am not going to dress up for you. 2 years that were very dark and very still and very empty. And then one morning, I remember it was May, because the dogwood out front was doing what dogwoods do. My granddaughter, Lily, came over. She was 7 years old. She came running in the way children run. Like gravity is just a suggestion. And she climbed up into this chair right here beside me, and she put her small hand on top of my old one, and she said, "Grandpa Harold, watch these." And she proceeded to show me how she could wiggle her ears. She could not, in fact, wiggle her ears, but she tried so hard with her whole face scrunched up for about 30 seconds. And I laughed. For the first time in I don't know how long, I just laughed. And in that moment, that tiny, ridiculous, wiggling ears moment, something cracked open in me. Because I was there. I was not at work. I was not in 1987. I was not replaying every conversation I should have had differently. I was in that chair with that child's hand on mine, watching her try to wiggle her ears. And it was enough. It was more than enough. That's when I understood what the secret actually was. It was never about doing more, saying more, being more. It was about arriving. Arriving in the room you're already standing in. Arriving in the conversation you're already in the middle of. Arriving for the person who is right in front of you, right now, reaching for you, needing nothing from you except the one thing that costs you nothing and that you keep spending somewhere else. Your presence, not your productivity, not your advice, not your plans or your problems or your past. Just ... you here, now, arrived. I spent 35 years being next to Elaine instead of with her. And then I had about 15 years of really truly being with her. And I'm grateful, Lord. I am grateful for those 15 years. The walks we finally took. The mornings we finally sat with. The times I put the newspaper down and just looked at her face. But I want more for you. I want you to have all of it. Every ordinary morning. Every interruption that's actually an invitation. So here is what I'm asking. Just one thing. Tonight, not later. Tonight, I want you to go to someone. Could be a spouse, a parent, a child, a friend. Could be someone you've been meaning to call. Could be someone sitting in the next room right now. And I want you to arrive, put the phone down, close the laptop, turn the television off, and just ... be there. Not fixing anything, not planning anything, just there. Because I am 92 years old, and I have watched more sunsets than most people reading this will ever see. And I promise you, from the far end of a long life, the meetings don't matter. The deadlines don't matter. The thing you're scrolling toward right now doesn't matter. The only thing you will think about when the room gets quiet and the question comes is whether you loved them while you had them. Don't let later steal any more from you. Not one more ordinary Tuesday. Not one more newspaper morning. Not one more football Sunday. All right. I think Lily's coming by after school today. She's 23 now. Still can't wiggle her ears. I'm going to make sure the porch light's on.